name's Ty Mentor, Chair of the Board. We have all commissioners present, Commissioners Fournier, Mejia, Grant, and Klaus, as well as County Manager Leonard Hernandez. We have up to an hour, if we need it, to address our standing items for this check-in, which is external boards and commission reports, and then any additional commissioner items. Public virtual attendance available on the Thurston County YouTube channel. We'll start with external boards, and I'll just go down the row. Commissioner Klaus, do you want to start?
Yes. Okay. Let's see. I only have a couple. I had a JazzCom meeting last night. That meeting went well and was very long. I think we went almost an hour and a half past when it's scheduled to end, but it was all really good stuff, so I'm glad we had a chance to cover everything. Councilmember Malcolm Miller from Lacey was elected as the chair of JazzCom this year, and I was elected as the vice chair, so I'm really excited about that and looking forward to serving in a leadership role on that committee. Some key highlights: the Bucota Joint Animal Services Professional Service Agreement was authorized last night, which includes $8,000 per year in assessments to Bucota based on a per capita rate. And that'll be through monthly installments of $666 each month. We also renewed the service agreement with Nisqually Tribe and Animal Services last night. And we went over the concept plan from Animal Arts related to the new building. And I plan on compiling some of that information and sending it out to the board so that just for awareness. There was a lot of information, but there were a couple key pieces as far as the project totals and the concept floor plan that I thought I would send out just so the board can see how that's going.
You mentioned Animal Arts. What does that mean?
That was the contracted group that is doing the concept with Animal Services.
Has there been any discussion on how the cost for a new shelter would be distributed?
Yeah, thank you for that question. That's something I'll print out or send out so everyone can review. But the gist of it is they'll be using reserves, a combination of reserves, state funding, grant funding, potential property sale of their current property, and donations, and then the remaining costs would be in per capita reimbursement for each jurisdiction that's involved. And so the estimate now, which these are pretty rough numbers because we have to consider the property sale and all of those other buckets of funding, but they are thinking it'll be between 26 and 34 million remaining for jurisdictions after everything else.
So right now our per capita is about 50%.
I believe it's
maybe a little less?
Yeah.
Around there?
Yeah.
So you said 34 million?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So, yeah, just kind of as an update. But those are really rough numbers, and I'll print out the specific calculations and send it out so everyone can see it. Are there any other questions about the JazzCom stuff?
I guess I do. So you said there'd be, you were like listed out different funding sources, state, but a lot of those are
speculative.
Yeah, speculative, or you don't know what the amount would be to say state funding. So what is the 26 to 34 actually representing? The total cost of the project?
So the total cost estimate is, let's see here. And these are all my handwritten notes. So once I show you the charts, I think it'll make sense if my numbers don't make sense. But so the total is between 33 and 41 million with a potential 8.5 million variance because there are certain parts of the building that they wouldn't necessarily need to add that would save several million. Like, for example, vet space. They would like to include vet space in the facility because of strain on animals, moving them from one place for surgery and then having them healing up in a kennel versus having a designated space for that. So right now they have a modular unit. They could do that same process in the new building, which would save between 2 and 3.5 million. So that's one way they could cut funds. But let's see. And then as far as state funding, they put forward a $2 million ask for a capital budget request with the legislature. And I know Representative Parsley is really pushing that. So hopefully they get good news with that request.
Okay, I see. So there, it sounds like there's like $7 million they've identified from external sources, leading the 26 to 34.
Yep.
And then where's that money coming from? Assessments? I mean,
Well,
how does that?
so
Us, 50% of it is from us.
So that's so that's kind of what the next steps are, is for like each representative to take this conversation back to their jurisdictions. But before I was planning on bringing that forward for a full board discussion, I wanted to make sure I had compiled all the information so that everyone could review it. And if there were any questions, I could get those questions addressed. And then I'm also setting up a meeting with Councilmember Miller so we can kind of talk through this, because he's got a lot of the historical context as well. And there were a couple items from last night's meeting that came up that we wanted to review, but this was the biggest one. I kind of want to see how other jurisdictions are handling these conversations too.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. So that's JASCOM. Are there any other questions about JASCOM?
Like, just the decision-making process and like, you know, like for me, it's weird when like which would be funding 50% of it roughly, are being told what this will look like and what the final product is gonna be, and it's not first, hey, what can you afford over the next, 5, 10, 20 years, and that would, like, if I'm gonna build my house, I build my house based on what I can afford, not on, the greatest, best house that, I'd wanna live in. So it seems like there's like a backwards, like we're now at the very end of a discussion about, I know we were involved in putting a capital budget request on the shared legislative agenda, but we're now at the very end of a decision-making process where it's like, here's this thing that's gonna be built that you're gonna pay for, but, as far as like size, technology, all those different things, we haven't had any, to my knowledge. I don't know, did that occur before I was?
So this point taken on the process, and I would also really hate to be told that we have to do something, and that's not where we're at right now with the conversation, so I'm glad you brought that up. This is the first meeting JASCOM has had where we reviewed size and the full scope of the concept plan. So this was the first meeting where Animal Arts brought that information forward. We've been asking for it for a number of months now, and now the concept is final. They've given us the floor plan. That's gonna be the floor plan. If they can fund it, ideally, they would be able to fund the floor plan that's been conceptualized by Animal Arts, but they could make tweaks. The idea is to have designated spaces for each of their functions. So there's more to come on that, and it's not at a point where we're being told we have to fund something. They're really trying to be more creative with their funding sources, which is why they put forward all these different revenue sources, and we don't really know what everything's gonna look like, but that's why the next step is for jurisdictions to have conversations. But as far as the timeline, just so everyone's aware, we're not being told we need to do this right now. If we were to all say yes right now, it would be still 3.5 years before this building could even be completed. And that would be a fast timeline. So we're not at that point where we're gonna say yes right now. But when we finally do get to the point where we've all agreed, we're not forced to do anything. The ILA doesn't force us to do anything. It actually says that it would be on a per capita basis per jurisdiction, if the jurisdictions authorize that. So we would have to say yes. We can't be told. The ILA doesn't give JASCOM the authority to tell us what to do.
And if the state gives us $2 million, then we just give it back because we don't have the other 34 million. I mean, that's what made me a little nervous. Like, if we're really pressing for $2 million out of a $33 to $41 million project, is $2 million is $2 million, but it's not gonna get us anywhere near the finish line, so.
It moves dirt.
So like, I mean, to press the legislature for that
Yeah.
and then just have to turn around and return it seems because we can't move forward, doesn't seem like, go ahead, Commissioner Grant.
Yeah, so, I mean, I think I'm gonna address just a little bit of all of those things that I'm hearing, Will. With capital, in my experience, with these kinds of like concept plans, right? That come before groups like this, it would be like, you set out, I mean, because I'm just kind of responding to Wayne, you had said something about it. I would look for something I can afford versus what I wish I had. And over the years, being a part of years of discussions around state buildings that are, falling down and different projects, and I've just been a part of a lot of these things. And what I know is that generally you ask experts, which it sounds like we're doing, to come back with a concept plan and say, because you really want, what would the perfect thing be in order for our staff to want to be there, for our long-term projections for the number of animals we're going to serve? So you get these experts to come in and say, here's what you really are going to need that's going to be the best to get you to where you need to go. And then you start to say, okay, well, here's where we got. How do we then figure out how to scale that back? So then they have to start, these discussions start, and you start scaling it back, and going, okay, how can we do this? Now, if you had capital funding this year for $2 million, but the project's not gonna be built for 3 years, there is the potential to keep working towards how do you bring more money on over the next, and how do you make that argument to capital funding? That's how my experience has been with capital projects in the past, but so I'm always interested in knowing what's really needed and then scaling back from there and starting to work on full funding years before.
I understand that part,
Yeah.
but this is an external group that is planning, their needs and their wants and their future, that through an ILA, we are the primary funding source for.
Right.
And while we have a representative on that group, it very much affects our budget, and we're very, we're
Right, we're
very
on the
little
hook.
involved in the process. And then, if you don't say, hey, stop, you need to include us, what we end up with is like a year from now, 2 years from now, somebody walks in with a model and says, look at what everybody else has agreed to. Thurston County, we just need you to make sure you're on board because everyone else loves it. And then we're just stuck holding the bag like this has happened, and this has happened like 15, times in the last year. That's
Okay,
just
good to know, yeah.
County manager, in your former jurisdiction, I'm curious how this type of system was funded and sourced, because, we have a unique
Yeah.
arrangement here.
Animal control was part of the county, was part of public health. And so we did go through a process whereby we got a consultant on board, and they presented a very elaborate, this is all, because they go by standards. There's animal control standards nationwide. And we said, we can't afford that.
Like a shelter type of
Yeah,
building?
it was a shelter. It was a shelter that we had contracts with jurisdictions to house their animals. And so we went through a process whereby we said, well, but we were in the driver's seat. So they were actually answering to staff, and of course the board gave us direction that we wanted something built, but they also put a price tag of what they could afford. I think in this environment, the county should think about, and I know this is Commissioner updates, but the county should think about, once we get more information, I appreciate Commissioner Klaus for flagging this right after you had a meeting, so well done to give us a heads up. A position statement to JASCOM that, we are in favor of certain things, but there's fiscal constraints that we might want to be mindful of, and that way the board has been able to put their oar in the water. And I believe, Commissioner Fournier, that's sometimes what things move fast, and it may not always get on our radar, and then we do find ourselves with hey, everybody likes this. Because if you think about, if we're 50%, proportionally the cities have a much smaller percentage, so their threshold is going to be different in what they're looking at. So being that this is, such a big component, but there are standards, and then there's a way that you can build things that meet the requirements, but may not necessarily are the be all end all to try to get yourself to functionality. And I think that's what Commissioner Grant is saying is, you start big and then you work your way back. And if we had a position statement from the board that we work together on, that outlined that, I think that would help the conversation so that folks would know early on where the county stands. Because we don't want to be the rain at the end of on the parade at the end of the process.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I would just say that this is one of those things where, like that, when you said you have a price tag, right? So where I'm really looking forward to being able to, for us as a board, to be able to look at where do we need to be in 5 years, like having a projection of easily looking and going, look, we can't spend more than, we've done a 5-year budget plan or outlook for ourselves, like just a temporary plan. And we're able to say, look, no matter what happens, we can't give you more than 3 million a year. You know what I'm saying? And so we have the ability to look forward and go, and then they realize, okay, within their constraints, they only are gonna get this much from us, which means they're only gonna get this much from City of Olympia, which means they've got a huge hurdle to figure out how to fill that gap, and that's on them. So that's kind of where, it'd be nice to be able to say, okay, what's our price tag and what are we willing to, and that kind of thing.
Commissioner Klaus.
Yeah, I appreciate all of that, the conversation, and to the county manager's point related to the animal control standards, that was part of the conversation, was animal arts took that into consideration as well as best practices. And then, yeah, kind of what Commissioner Grant's saying about pie in the sky and then how do we scale back is kind of the goal. And we're not by any means at the end of a conversation about funding. There were a number of things discussed last night, including how to bring in additional revenues through additional contracts for services to offset the jurisdictional assessments. And that was something that the commission last night gave a thumbs up on, was for staff to go ahead and explore additional contracts for service because they've been solicited by a number of outside agencies asking if they'd be interested in additional contracts, which would bring in more revenue. So hopefully we hear more about that in the future so that we can kind of feel a little bit less, intimidated by the cost of this, because it is a huge lift. But we also talked about, where is it? Like how they would make this happen. And they're not set on any specific mechanism of like, oh, we're gonna fund this up front. We need all the jurisdictions to pay up front. That's not what they're talking about. They're considering exploring loan repayment plans. They're saying nothing is off the table as far as how to fund this. One jurisdiction, they talked about potentially a bond with one jurisdiction taking the lead on that. I don't know what that would look like, but that was just kind of something that was thrown out. And then there's also pending legislation related to animal control districts, which could bring in additional revenue as well. And I don't know how that works either, but these were just the notes I took from the conversation last night about some of the various options they're looking into for how to fund this, so that it doesn't fall onto the jurisdictions as such a heavy burden financially.
If I could, Commissioners, just for the sake of the conversation, the executive director sort of reached out and asked to schedule time with me to connect, and I believe this is one of the topics, so I appreciate her being proactive to do that. And we partner with Commissioner Klaus on taking what I receive as well and packaging both sets of information so we can send out a brief to all of you as to where things are at.
Sounds good. Go ahead, Commissioner Klaus, you have others?
Okay, can I ask did you get a chance to look at the bill at 18?
Yeah.
Okay, so everyone's good?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, sorry.
The only other thing on that is the current building has critical infrastructure issues, so the longer we stay in that building, as we all know from other capital deficiencies that we're experiencing in the county, it's gonna cost more and more to stay in a building with such critical issues, which include HVAC, roof, electric, kennel replacements, immediate costs upwards of $600,000, and then near-term costs close to $1 million to address some of those issues. So
Sounds familiar.
yeah. So that's all I've got on JASCOM. Regional Housing Council, we had a subcommittee meeting to start planning the retreat, and that meeting went well. And I think that's all as far as big updates for me.
Okay, Commissioner Grant?
sorry, I'm just pulling it up. I don't, I would say that, I'm just gonna say this out loud, that I'm fine, I left the meeting this morning going, I am completely, excited that I felt like I actually knew what I was doing this morning, so, and then this meeting, I don't know. So anyway, and I'm just saying that, cause I'm like, oh, what was I supposed to do for this meeting? But ultimately,
Sometimes we don't have, I mean,
Right,
you don't
I
have to
don't-
go through every committee meeting, like, it's really just, if you think something is of general concern.
yeah, and I think that my question then, I'll just, that there are two things that, kind of came up for me. One, I already mentioned it to, some others, but that for, Pack Mountain, I attended, their meeting. Coming from the last couple of years working in workforce, on directly on workforce things. It was really great to kind of connect, and just letting everyone know that I'm, most likely planning to attend, with, that group of the Workforce National Convention at the end of March. And so just like putting that on the radar. And then, the other, is it okay to talk about Thurston Mason BHO? I mean, okay, so Carolina and I, so for the Thurston Mason, BHO or HASO, both Carolina and I sit on that board. We were asked, well, I'm gonna give some context. This county, is in, what they would call for statewide funding, True Blood Phase 3. There were 3 phases of True Blood. True Blood Phase 3, is money that was allocated in a budget that I actually sent out at one point in time that said, in the region that we have money for this specific project, we're gonna put an RFP out because we are now going to work specifically on this region to decrease True Blood outcomes. And so with that, the Department of Commerce put out an RFP and nobody applied for it for a crisis stabilization facility. No one applied for it. And then talking with Joe Avalos, the executive director of the BHO, and Carolina and I, we went up and visited a current place who's interested in doing it. And so Connections is the name of a company that is up in Kirkland. They have our first ever crisis stabilization center that's up there. We went and visited. It was incredibly cool. There's a back entrance where EMTs and fire departments and police officers drop people off. And the front is a walk-in entrance. And what's really, and the parts I just want to, up in Seattle.
Kirkland.
And I was part of that process up there, getting them in. So there'll be 5 more of those up in Seattle, but this is the first one. And
Well, this is new.
this is we opened like 7 months ago or something like that. And this is a model that's successful in many other states, but it's the first time we got it here. And this bill I'm testifying on today is essentially what we need to make sure that that place gets fully funded operationally. And so we went and met with them. We talked about, would you be interested in doing this RFP? Would you be willing to come down here and create this already evidence-based practice model that they have in place for us in Thurston County? And they said yes, and they're competitive like I am and want to get it in before February 20, I think it's like due February 22nd. So everyone's rushing around to kind of get this done. And so I just want to let you guys know that I think Caroline and I are both in full support of this. There's some things on our end, and I've written up something that we'll send to Leonard, that we need to write a letter, I would like us all to write a letter of support of this project. I'm hoping that you'll give us direction to have, we'll get support from you all to get direction to start helping them look for a place to do this. And then the last thing is, hoping that I can get some support from you all around, to get some of our legislators and our local municipalities all behind the work, so that we can really look at what this thing will do. The coolest thing about this, I will say to you all, is that essentially what it means is not just the people who are going to jail and the people who, so right now, if I am suffering from a psychiatric episode today, and I want help, where do I go? I am not well, I'm hearing things, where do I go? In Thurston County. And you go to the ER, that's the only place that you can go. And Providence attended this with us. And Providence is excited because the potentials to drive the capacity away from the ER here and the potential for our fire and our response to be able to not have to take people and drop them off at the ER is gonna be the biggest thing. And so this is a place where I don't have to be in trouble or have to do anything. I can just walk right in the front entrance and say, I need help right now, and they will give it to you. There's a prescribing person on site. There is, and on the back end, drop off EMS, drop off law enforcement. It's just amazing. So that's my update on that.
Yeah, and on that note, one of the coolest thing for me is, Commissioner Munster, you probably remember when there were huge backlogs for our ambulances to do drop-off at the hospital, and there was this huge backlog, and our ambulances were waiting outside of St. Pete's, waiting for there to be beds available, and there was this whole just backlog that was happening, and every time there was an ambulance off rotation, right, it just created this strain for our medics across the county. And what was really cool for me in this instance was that the drop-off is so quick. Like, they have this timing on, once they bring them in, and it's like a quick handoff because they
7.5 minutes or something is what they got it down to.
And so they, it's pretty quick, and just trying to get that information, and, then the first responders are out of there. And I think that is so important, especially when we're talking about kind of that strain for our medic units across the county, and sometimes how they're having to sit outside the hospital, just waiting for there to be space available. So I was really excited to go. It was really great to go with Commissioner Grant because she has a lot of experience in that sector. And so she was able to explain and break down a lot of things for me, and I really appreciated that. So it's a very exciting possibility, I think, for the county.
And I will just flag in there that, essentially there's a lot of, when it comes to funding these kinds of things, there's a lot of back end things going on. And we potentially had the chance here in Thurston County to get one of these before, but it failed. It failed. And the reason that it failed is because what tends to happen is a company like this will come in, will give capital funding, and then the operational funds are not. So operational funding would be, they have the ability to draw down Medicaid, or private insurance, but this company actually has all of the resources to do full billing like that. And they're already they have a model that works. Whereas I can tell you for certain, across Washington State for the last 10 years, every other one of these crisis facilities has to be funded out of county dollars, like extra county dollars. And so this is the bill today that I'm testifying on, along with this new model, are the two necessary, these steps that we need to take in order for this to become something that is a long-term, long-funded thing that will be all in every one of the states. And we'll be the first county, we'll be the second county. King County will be the first, and we will be, Thurston County will be the second to ever have something like this.
King County, didn't they pass a voter tax?
But that was those are for 5 different ones that they're making on their own. Theirs are a little different. These guys came in on their own, bought the facility, got a few $1 million from King County to help them revamp the facility, and off they went. So, and we have the RFP they're gonna get, it's gonna give them $4.5 million to get a facility. They're gonna need a few additional funds, capital-wise, to remake something, but, and I have some formal documents written up that we'll get over to Leonard and Amy, and then you all can kind of read a little bit more about that. So anyway, more to come. Hoping that the session will really support the work too, so.
Commissioner Mejia?
Thank you. Attended intercity transit. We reviewed the September 25th service change equity analysis and set a public hearing for March 19th, 2025. So for those of you who don't know, in 2018, Intercity Transit adopted a long-range plan intending to incrementally expand and transform local bus services. So the plan called for several elements, including bus service later in the evening, enhanced bus stops, service to new areas of the community, and higher frequency on heavily traveled corridors. And so there's been a lot of sessions that they've done in order to get responses to this analysis. And so the March 19th is another opportunity to do that. And then negotiations are still ongoing with our operators at IT. In terms of Legislative Steering Committee, I want to thank Commissioner Menser, Commissioner Grant, and Commissioner Fournier for attending the Legislative Steering Committee reception. I think it's very important as a home-based county that we show up in force, and we did, and just very thankful for all of you for showing up and supporting. For LSC, Commissioner Fournier and I attended. Just as a heads up, we reviewed House Bill 1113. And so this one was very interesting, and we had a lot of conversation about this one. So under certain circumstances, the prosecuting authority reviewing a case for possible criminal charges against a person may use its discretion to offer a diversion opportunity to the person before filing charges. And what this bill would do is that courts of limited jurisdiction, basically from a motion from either party, agree to dismiss the defendant's simple or gross misdemeanor charges, and the court can continue the case for up to 12 months, during which the defendant must comply with specific terms, conditions, or programs deemed appropriate based on their situation. If the defendant substantially complies with the imposed conditions, the court is mandated to dismiss the charges. Staff recommended our support for this bill, but that did not pass, so WASAC will remain neutral on this. And so just as a heads up, this is, the Prosecutors Association is against this bill, but there are other entities who are also in support of this bill, just because it does give the, basically the judges kind of that, a little bit more of that authority to place people into diversion opportunities, and takes it away, some of that from the prosecuting attorneys. So just in case any of you get asked about that one, just wanted to let you just flag that bill. In terms of Thurston Regional Planning Council, we had a presentation on the road usage charge in Washington. I think this is the 4th time I received that presentation. Chair,
I'm not going to.
Chair Fye said he was dropping a bill on this. So once I get a bill number, I will share it with the group. And then we also had a presentation on the equity of and regional transportation plan, and staff have done a great job on that. And just as a heads up, I am on the Executive Director's Evaluation Subcommittee. WASAC Board of Directors, we got a presentation from a firm who will be handling the recruitment efforts for the new Executive Director and hoping to have someone by June. For litigation update, just as a heads up, with DCYF, we continue to work with them. We have an agreement, not a settlement, and Derek was very specific on that. They say the working relationship with DCYF has been great, and so they kind of continue to continue on that path. With indigent defense case, this actually is now going to be heard in appeals. So the case is not dismissed, it's in appeals. And with the True Blood case, we currently have an MOU, so there's more to come on that. Derek, one of the things when Derek came on board, who's our interim, the board asked him to seek alternate sources of funding. So we received a presentation from a firm for that. I would like to, for appointments, congratulate Commissioner Grant in getting the primary appointment for the CJTA board. So I know you will serve us very well on that. And thank you, Commissioner Menser, for volunteering for the Winter Sports Advisory Board.
You did? Oh my gosh.
And Commissioner Fournier for volunteering for the Forensic Investigation Board. And I just want to say for the winter one, it wasn't me who volunteered, Ty, like he stepped up to the plate, so
It was
congratulations.
the people sitting next to me. Were like, you owned a snowmobile, you should be having.
You owned a snowmobile, you lived in Alaska.
And then, so I'm on the Federal Legislative Subcommittee with WASAC, and so we'll be setting a meeting to discuss federal priorities in the coming weeks.
Before you leave Wasac, can I ask a question?
Yes.
You had mentioned to me before the meeting that there was some interest in elevating the interim, and then at the meeting, it was all about recruitment. So I'm wondering, is Derek not interested in the full-time job, or was that the majority of the board wanted to continue to recruit, or?
That was an executive board decision. Yeah, so I'm not sure, after the conversations I had with Commissioner Kaufman, and I'm not sure if there were other concerns from other members as he made his round of calls to the board members, so.
Will Derek apply for the position?
My question is, yeah, is your understanding that he's still a candidate
Yes.
under consideration?
Yeah. Yes, and for me, like, I was excited for the appointment process, and, yeah, I was, so it was an executive level decision. Just, let's see, covered the connections, and we had a code of conduct subcommittee, our second meeting, and it was very fruitful, so we're hoping to be coming with something in the coming weeks. And then I've had different meetings with different legislators on a variety of topics ranging from immigration to birth certificate processing, and as well as revenue. So just a heads up, there is a proposal for a sales tax for assistance with the World Cup. Once I get a bill number for that, I'll be sure to pass it along. But I was very excited to hear that there is a proposal for something like that, and just want to be sure that whatever sales tax is passed, right, that it just doesn't help the actual zone, but also the fan zones that are going to be kind of carrying this as well. And then just a quick update on Senate Bill 5014. So we received kind of a heads up from Paul that this is a bill from Representative Doglio, and basically it requires county auditors to take action regarding election cybersecurity. And the concern with that is the fact that there is no fiscal note attached, so it shows no cost for the state and isn't determinant for local governments. So that cost will be borne exclusively by counties, and so they were asking kind of what would be the impacts for all of the counties. Auditor Hall and Sherry have weighed in on the potential impacts of the bill. And just at a base level, it's upwards of $1 million, basically depending on how the bill is interpreted. And so it would basically require changing all county email addresses to kind of a .gov domain. And so it really it would be a huge undertaking for IT and for the auditor, and it really impacts every technology related to what we do at the county. It wouldn't just be election security. So right now, we have sent over that information to our lobbyist as well as Paul, and so thank you, County Manager, for your assistance in getting that information for us, but just wanted to give, just in case you're asked about that bill, just.
How is that not an unfunded mandate violation? That sounds pretty clear.
It does, but, I know that they're working to get specific informations and fiscal notes from all of counties just to inform, our representative that there is an impact to us, so. Just a heads up on that. And yeah, just, I will leave it at that. I won't cover events I attend.
Attended TCOM where we did the review for the executive director for performance review. Everything was all gold stars, as mentioned by Commissioner Mejia. Attended Wendy Hill.
Yeah.
Yep, she's doing a great job. As mentioned by Commissioner Mejia, I attended LSC along with her, where she She led a great meeting and represented Thurston County well. And then attended the Jail Modernization Task Force, where we had a presentation from WSIP on a recent survey or a recent study that they conducted, which I know we've all received. And it was interesting. Some of the stuff that we've heard kind of anecdotally from the sheriff about our jail and space needs and changing demographics were kind of confirmed in the study, where I was talking about how most offenders now are more high violent offenders and mental health offenders, as opposed to kind of the lower level offenders that would be ones that were more apt or more appropriate for kind of restorative justice measures. A lot of those folks are now on electronic home monitoring. And so kind of our jail space issues were kind of reaffirmed in kind of the changing demographic models that they were presenting. So it was good.
Okay, very good. Just real quick, I guess, Innovative Justice meeting this morning, we're focusing on reentry, and we had a presentation from someone at DSHS, and he's looking at this at a state level, so he was kind of going through different counties and what they're doing. And Clark County apparently has a very robust approach toward reentry, where they've got a section of their jail dedicated to it, and they've got staffing, and they've got stuff built into the jail that looks a lot like. So anyway, I hadn't heard that, and I checked in with Prosecutor Thunheim. He hadn't heard that, so he's going to call his colleague in Clark County, and we'll report back kind of on what's going on down there. And I'd like to know, when they started all that, and if they have data on how it's working, if it's yielded results that. But anyway, I hadn't heard that, and it was pretty cool, because that's some of the things we've been talking about to doing in Thurston, beefing up what we do with reentry. Let's see. The only other thing I wanted to mention was I'm preparing for a presentation that I'll be giving, or I'll be on a panel in a conference in Oregon next month about what's going on with legacy forests in Washington State. Just as an example of a county, I was asked to do that. And so in working with the folks on that, who are on that panel, which are some of the advocates from the different groups that work on this issue, just like the last 2 years, there's been a legislative ask for Climate Commitment Act funding for replacement lands, for swapping for legacy forests, keeping beneficiaries whole over time. They're going to make another ask like that. So a one-pager is supposed to be coming my way. I haven't seen it yet. When I see it, I'll give it to county manager. You guys can see it. It's been in line with our legislative priorities for the last 3 years. I would assume that we would want to probably support that or support some iteration of it. So I just wanted to give you a heads up. When I see that, I'll shoot it along, and then we can give maybe Deborah the thumbs up that we want her to advocate. And I gave her a thumbs up. I ran into her upstairs last week, and so I kind of explained to her that might be coming, so she's aware of it. And she's checking in with DNR, because DNR, with the new lands commissioner, they might help us advocate for this rather than not help us. So we're checking in with DNR to see where they stand and exactly what the ask might be. So that's I think it for me on committees. Commissioner Mejia, I was at the board of directors, and she covered that really thoroughly. Bring all your concerns about state level winter recreation. So I'll be getting up to speed on that. So let's go to other commissioner items. Maybe I'll go backwards order and start with myself. Just one thing is I raised about 2 weeks ago, kind of gave you guys an overview of the ask from DNR about the last year's money that was allocated by the legislature to do replacement lands, and whether Radagast which is the parcel right near in the center of Cap Safe Forest, was still that's what we put in our letter in December. They said, well, there's also Star Wagon if you're interested. It's a little bit simpler from an accounting standpoint. I was advocating that we stick with Radagast, but I wanted to give you guys time to think about it or ask me questions. I don't know if anyone's thought about it or anything, but at some point I would like to report back to DNR that we're going to stick with our original ask, or we're not. But I told Dwayne Emmons at DNR that I would check in with the board and we'd let them know. So I was just wondering if anyone's comfortable with supporting my request to stick with Radagast.
I'm in support.
That's fine.
All right, so I'll just let DNR know that we're gonna stick with that, and we'll work with them on whatever details may need to be fleshed
Yep.
through.
I think that CPED was working on, let me check on where that is, but
Okay.
getting this board's concurrence is great.
Perfect. Back to you, Commissioner Fournier.
I have no Commissioner items.
Okay, Commissioner Mejia.
I want to give a couple shout outs to staff because just they've been doing first the Super Bowl potluck, just great job. And they did a great job in bringing everything together and setting that up. Very thankful. And then I also want to just say a huge thank you for sending out the AISs before the first board meeting for the Tuesdays. I know I really appreciate it, having all of that information at the first agenda review. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Commissioner Grant.
I don't think I have anything. I was gonna say, I also, I was also appointed to the E911 WASAC. I don't know what else it's called, but just making everyone aware that I'll be on.
Well,
Oh, not
you were
yet.
were you the only one for that
I was the
one?
only one. They
Okay,
just
yeah.
appointed me. Oh,
Okay.
yeah.
Oh.
Well, yeah, well, they will, I think, but, yeah. Anyway, so that is also something I hope
Yes.
to be coordinating across state. So, okay, go for it. That's it.
So I have one thing, okay, maybe I'll wait actually till next week for this. So, cause I don't have all the details, but, Washington Together, which also in the past has been known as Together for Kids, is a youth serving organization in Thurston County, and they are putting on an event, in just a few weeks. I wish I had the date in front of me, but it's for middle school youth who are, girls, trans, queer, BIPOC, youth. And they're doing like a retreat, in, STEM or STEAM. And it's coming up, I believe in March, so it's pretty soon. And if any youth, if anyone here or anyone listening is connected with youth, who fall into that demographic, it doesn't have to be youth in Thurston County, it can be youth from anywhere. It's gonna be a really big, like, all-day retreat with a lot of different workshops. I'll be presenting a workshop as well, and I will have more information with the specific date when we check in next, but I just wanted to get that out there early because registration is opening up pretty soon.
Is it like on a Saturday or something?
It's on a Saturday, yeah.
In March, maybe, or?
I believe it's in March, yeah, and I can email that out,
I appreciate that.
yeah.
See what's going on. Okay, very good. Come to the end of the agenda. We're adjourned.